Well, check it out, y'all. We got what you need. We're all living in apartments, condos, vans. Well, dude, even you can have a studio in a box. Yes, we can help you with that right here at Blind Knowledge. We work on your budget, and we figure out your measurements. We'll get you the best sound for the best price. Let me know, 877-237-1143 or at blindknowledge.com. Yep.
Spectres all around me, living in stock, blazing the dark. One by one, pictures gather round me. Where those moonflowers used to lost no more. Spectres gather round here, living in stock, blazing the dark. Night by night, stare into the black where moonflowers used to grow.
Welcome to Paranormal the New Normal. Internet's taking a minute today, apparently. I am your host, Jeremy, as always, trying to make the world seem a little more normal every day. Does it ever happen? No, and I don't think it's supposed to, but we'll see what happens today, because I am joined by a guest from across the pond, and I am very happy to have him on. My guest today, ladies and gentlemen, is Paul Quinton, Transformational Mentor, energy worker, and a lot more, but we're going to get into all that in a bit. But first things first, how you doing this morning, Paul?
I'm really well, thank you. Yes, it's the afternoon over here for us, so thank you for getting up, Jeremy. I'm good. Yes.
Oh, I got kids. I've been up. But yes, folks, this is a Sunday morning cigarette and coffee edition of Paranormal New Normal, so enjoy it.
Been there, done
that. So the first question I like to ask everybody on this show, Paul, is what got you into this paranormal spiritual world? Like, what dragged you into it?
Family. So as a very young age, I grew up in a psychic spiritual family. The main practice was we went to the spiritualist church occasionally, where they sort of give messages, which was really good. There was a good introduction to, how to channel and bring spirit through the voice. But our main work at my young age was in seances. So what we would do is we'd do it like once a week. I think it was on a Tuesday night, and we talk, commune with a lot of definitely obviously ancestors, but more it sort of graduated into sort of helping stuck souls. So it was really an introduction, and then we talked to them, help them move on. Some have been murdered, some have had horrific deaths, and there's that understanding that certain things happen. When we pass over, and it's quite traumatic. Sometimes people don't realize that they're dead or they're still lost, or there's a lot to that sort of paranormal understanding about when we go between here and the next plane. But it was very interesting to open up to that. It triggered a lot of fear in me at the beginning, obviously, because it was in the height of the 80s when the horror movies were all up. So you have this Christ, and I was only small as well. So and I used to see spirit, and I used to smell them as well. I especially remember my grandmother when she died, and there's a certain smell that the body gives off just before they're going to pass. That was in the house for about a week. And then she used to come through, and I used to see her a lot. And I think that's how I sort of it became normal for me from a young age, So, yeah, that's how I really got into it from the start.
Well, I mean, that's a nicer way to get into it than what a lot of people tell me where, oh, no, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a ghost next to my bed.
Yeah.
It's a lot better way to get into it than that. I mean, at least it's with a loved one that's introducing you to it rather than a complete unknown ghost that you don't know if it's there to scare you, to try to harm you, or to help you maybe.
Yeah. Especially got no one to talk about. I think that happened to some of my family members when they were growing up, like my mother and her brothers. They used to have a lot of activity in the house. So for me, I was lucky because it was sort of a bit more controlled. Absolutely. But I tell you what, you get into that fear straight away. So it's a good time to, and over the years, I think it was in my early 20s when I started really sort of channeling and going into dimensional stuff, and mainly just through meditation and and I'll talk about more about this as well, but understanding the shadow spirits and actually there is nothing to fear, and it's all magnetic, and this fear is because you still have it unresolved in your soul body. So, and it was really good to sort of understand that, you can, because when you sort of break through that human perception, you understand there is no fear, and then you understand the conditioning on this planet. So it's been quite an interesting journey with getting over the fear of what is unseen, because that's deeply coded in all human beings. We fear what we don't know.
Of course. I mean, it's the same when you're a kid. You look in, you want your closet door shut at night because you don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
I mean, 9 out of 10 times, probably nothing, but you never know.
Yeah.
and then Monsters Inc. came out, and that brought a whole new level of fear to the closet door thing. But
yes.
But yeah, it's just it's
the horror movies didn't help.
Oh yeah, I mean, you grew up in the Poltergeist era, so that would freak me out to no end.
Absolutely.
They're here. Yeah. Yes. They're always here. That's the message. That's
the irony. They're always here. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, hell, there's probably one around me in my garage right now, because there usually is. But so what? Usually I ask if you've had any experience, but I have a feeling with you that'd be a loaded question and we'd be going for hours. So let me narrow it down a little bit. What's the experience when you were a kid that stuck out the most? The one that you remember every detail of to this day?
I think when I saw my first spirit, which was actually my great-great-grandmother, and they were doing a seance and I wasn't involved. And I looked out the window because I never used to see them. I used to see them in my imagination, my psychic sight. So it was less daunting. But when you physically see them, so I remember that. And I remember screaming the house down because I was freaking out, because I hadn't, obviously at that age, I hadn't processed my fear body and understood it. So that really stood out for me. But I've had quite a few other experiences where they've been, obviously, there's been more activity, but less, obviously, the fear had gone. And like I said, no one wants to go to the toilet at 3 a.m. in the morning and see someone standing there. That's going to freak anyone out. So it's like, quite intrusive. But thank God I don't, have that anymore. So that's good in that sense. Because it's also very annoying, because I spoke to a lot of clients where they've got spirits and they can see, and they're in the house, and often they're watching this particular guy. These two guys were always there, and they were watching his wife undress. And that was hugely traumatic for him, because obviously it's like people in the house and he couldn't do anything. And they were also trying to talk to people. But then there was also that level of intrusiveness, which was also very demeaning. So I think, people seeing spirits in that way can cause a lot of trauma for people, depending on their intention, obviously. So,
of course. I mean, I myself have never seen a spirit. I can sense them. I've been told that I'm on the way to opening my empath abilities, but I get to see one, and part of me's happy about that. Part of me is part of me is a little sad about that, because part of me wants to be able to see, but part of me is very happy I haven't, because I don't want to be scared at 3 a.m. in my house when my dogs are barking and I have to get up.
That's
because it's bad enough when you wake up at midnight and you open the door and the dog's just sitting there wagging its tail, and and it just looks like a demon at night. So it's like, what the? And then you jump back and you see and then you hear her panting. You're like, oh, okay. But still, it's scary. It's scary. But well, as you got older, did you start to use this ability as a profession, or?
Yeah, so I'll give you a bit of a background. Yeah, so absolutely. So obviously, I always had that connection. So if I was in trouble or out of line or was worrying about things, the general human stuff, I would always have that go-to, like connect with spirit, and I did it through affirmation prayer at the time, whatever. But and then so basically, yeah. So I grew up in a spiritual family, did a normal stuff, had a normal teenage. Then I went into the military. I was in there for about 6 years. And then when I was getting out of the military, I thought, right, I need to do this as a full-time job. And there was a few other people that had got into, they were doing Reiki and other bits and pieces that were talking to me. And I was like surprised, because these soldiers are quite, they're quite hard line. But they had this sort of thing. And I was just talking to them. I thought, that's a good message. I'll do this. Because obviously my family were doing normal psychic healing, which is just intuitive in the moment, not so much a modality. So I thought I needed to get some, modalities behind me, get some structure with that, because that's what the world likes to see. And then I did that for a couple of years. I started training, and then I went and worked on the cruise ships, and I started to teach it a little bit on there. So in the last 22 years, I've been doing it as a full-time job. And only I launched my own modality, which I now have patented. It's insured in about 35 countries. So I'm teaching that, and it's a channeled modality. So it's a process of how to uncondition human beings and to bring them into that alignment with their emotional, mental bodies, but also awaken this whole new era that we're moving into as consciousness. And it's a way, it's structured where we release timelines of energy, suppressed trauma, denied, repressed trauma, in a way where the emotional body is ready to then start accepting the soul body. And then we start to have impressions. So it's a lot about psychic development, intuition, and we work a lot with the shadow forces. So a lot of removing shadow energies and mechanisms that have been put into our DNA around our body, around our brain, and these sort of frequency coding. This is where we start to get into algorithm resequencing of the atom. There's a lot to it, and I won't go into it all now. But it's a process of realigning us with our own consciousness, our non-physical consciousness. So we're teaching that it's not about ascension, because we're already ascending. We're multidimensional. We are everywhere, and we are many people. We're just a hologram of ourselves here. And it's really understanding that you can start to have that full body experience with other aspects of yourself. But in order to do that, we have to remove the conditioning. Now, the conditioning has been heavily set through societal programming, the politicians, religion, all the rest of it. And so we get into removing those shadow imprints. We go into vaccines, we go into the reptilian brain, we go into the cells, we go into all of it. And really, it's just done through imagination and frequency. And I bring some of the Einstein teachings in there because he was obviously talking about how he got all of his stuff through imagination. So we teach you that imagination is your most powerful tool. And if you imagine something without any fear or doubt about what you're imagining, under universal law, it has to manifest. So we're sort of taking out of that sort of new age stuff, all the hippie stuff, the spiritual stuff, and bringing it back to basic laws. Yes, it has all of that energy stuff with it. But when you understand the simplicity of the laws, it really unconditions the whole process, because last thing human beings need is another full set of rules and procedures to awaken themselves. People are tired. They're fed up. We're having enough. Look, the wars, we're in polarized opposites now. And it also brings us back to understanding what's also happening on the planet now and what we're going through, and how that's a reflection of our own internal world. So it's really about, it's an education. It's fun, but the psychic and spiritual development is really, really good, because everyone's psychic, everyone's powerful. We're just conditioned not to feel it. So it's really about bringing you back to knowing that you don't have to go and get something. You don't have to use that mental male energy anymore. It's all about being receptive and just surrendering, so the soul can actually awaken in you, and then you have that full experience while you're here. So it's really about removing misinformation. It's alignment, misinformation, and awakening and transformation. So I work with that, and I do my one-on-ones. So I'm actually got a book almost coming out. It's actually with a publisher at the moment in America. So my literary agent's on it at the moment, so I should hear back soon. And then I'm just developing a few different other courses and bits and pieces. So it's really about, I'm taking it from the one-to-ones now. I still do those, of course, as the bulk of my business as well, but ultimately getting more into the teaching and using that platform to really start to re-educate people and get them into a place where they can understand who they are, and they can sit at home and do the work without having to, think they have to spend all this money or go to India, go to Peru, all the rest of it, and just be able to be still and find their own power. And because we all have it, and it's the misinformation that stopped us from understanding that. So it's really a journey, and we do it over 4 modules. There's a practitioner level if people want to do it, and it's fun. And the good thing about it is it's channeled, and each course is different, and everyone that comes on the workshops had a life together. So every workshop is different because there's different things coming up. So it's very interactive, and often I'll be saying something and Spirit will come in and say, no, we're doing this now. So it's quite fun. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, it's a spiritual awakening. It's been happening since either 2012, 2015. I've heard 2008. Like, there's different dates people give. But
absolutely, yeah.
There's been a spiritual awakening for at least the last 8 to 10 years, where more and more people, and I mean, this podcast is a pure example of it, because more and more people are waking up and experiencing their abilities and being like, okay, I'm more than the government tells me I am. I'm more than the world tells me I am. I can do more. And yes, I 100% agree. Religion has shut it down for hundreds of years, if not thousands. Yeah. And so has the government now, because the government and religion have been working together since, God, the 1600s at least. So,
absolutely. Yes.
it's just, but it kind of made me think of something when you said that we're all holograms. Because I mean, it made me think of the simulation theory or the matrix theory.
Yeah, the Matrix. Yeah. Well, I always reference the Matrix. Yes. I think the way spirits sort of explain it to me, and it's not 100% clear. I'm actually going to do some more help, but they explained to me in a channeling once that we are a projection of ourselves in the physical, because obviously this is the illusion. We're not physical beings. We're having a physical experience. We're non-physical, really. This physical experience was created for us as a playground. It was there to go and explore different realities. And a physical reality here and on another planet can be very different. It's completely different. They say Earth is one of the hardest schools because you really lose yourself here. Like it's So even just to be on Earth incarnated, they say you're a spiritual warrior. Spirits say, it's hard to be here, and they always reference being in a pain body, because obviously when you're out of your body, you're not experiencing that fear and panic and pain. So it's quite interesting. So the hologram imprint is really just because I think what they try to understand is that we're all collective consciousness. So we come here to experience individuality, but in truth, we're always in communication subconsciously with all of the aspects of ourselves. So when they say hologram, it's almost like your true source of power, which is your spirit. And then that spirit breaks into souls. And then those souls break into physical extensions and have different realities. And they're all sort of moving up into that mothership at once, bringing all that, consciousness. Because we're pioneering different realms at the moment. So it's they're collecting data. So it's a way. So when they talk about hologram, it's like you are here, but you're not really your full self, your true self. It's just an aspect of yourself. So I think that's where they mention hologram. But yeah, I've heard a few people talk about holograms before. But
I've heard a similar theory, and I'm wondering how you feel about this. The theory I've heard in the past is that we are. I mean, it's kind of like the Scientology method of thinking, but we're all extraterrestrial spirits, and Earth is basically how we prove that we deserve to ascend to a higher dimension, a higher plane, is that the alien spirits basically take our bodies and they live life, and either you accomplish what you're meant to do that life, or you got to live it again. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. You got to keep living the same life over again until you get it right. I mean,
that's true.
do you think it's possibly that we're extraterrestrial of some origin, or is it something else completely?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's 22 hybrid experiments going on at the moment, but most of us is a lot of seeded DNA is absolutely. Oh God, yeah. And that's been talked about for eons of time. And you've got those original star races. You had the Arcturians that come down. You had the Syrians, which was the Egyptian civilization. I think the Greeks were. They're from Andromeda or somewhere, and then we had the Aboriginals. So there's about 5 seeded races, original races. So they obviously mixed a lot of the DNA with our humans. So we are, I think, as far as I know, we are a hybrid experiment. But also we have the capacity to hold a lot more emotional energy than a lot of other beings. So the human body has a lot of abilities that we're just starting to awaken to. But in order to do that, you have to have a lot of different DNA to come in and I suppose they take the best out of aspects of culture. That's how I understood it. I don't really, again, that's probably another good challenge for me to do, actually. So it's good that you brought that up. And obviously that I won't really talk too much about that on the workshop, but it's something that I personally believe in and understand, but I don't really talk about it much. But it's definitely DNA from other aspects, absolutely. And Spirit have told me that before, but they haven't gone into the complexity of it, the whole thing. They've told me about how certain things are made and created, which has been interesting. But as far as the DNA is, I think the latest I heard was about 22 different experiments going on here with our DNA. Absolutely. So that DNA that's is it being experimented with? Obviously, the originality of that core is still involved here. Like I said, in America, you've got the CIA now. There's another article come up last week or yesterday. Sorry, now they've got the pictures on the moon bases, and they're now starting to talk about extraterrestrials. And they're saying, well, yes, they have been here. We have been working with them. So that information is now coming out. They were told to do a long, long time ago, but because it's happening now in 2023, is because the aquarian age has officially kicked in. So it is everything has to be awakened now, and that's the whole era of us being here now, is to clear our emotional body, clear the ancestral line, awaken to the extraterrestrial galactic community that we've been thriving in, and the non-physical, which is firstly your soul, but also spirit, and know that that's just a normal way of living. There's no taboo around it. There's nothing evil around it. It's just reality. So,
and it's funny because if you think about like this DNA experimenting, and you think about our human history, what if in World War II Hitler actually was working with an alien race to try to make a perfect design? What if that's what he was trying to do? And what if the Allies were trying to shut him down because their governments didn't want the aliens having that much control?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was more the breakaway German cultural group. So I've read a lot about this. Again, I have a channel, Corey Good and the other one, Cosmic Disclosure, going a lot about that. And they talk about these breakaway groups that and they went. That's why they're all down in Antarctica now. And even a couple of years ago, you had all these scientists going down because that's where they're finding reversing all the alien tech. But you've got a lot of our ancient civilizations down there that had a lot of powerful technology. And I think as what they explained was that the real threat wasn't us. It was never us anyway. They've just create two sides, but really it's one side. And then of course it was off planet. So I think definitely he was very much involved with the esoteric. But I also heard that he was King George's illegitimate son. So
Oh,
crazy stuff.
I haven't heard that one, but it would make. I mean, it would make sense to some degree, but not completely. I mean,
no, I don't.
Because I mean, Hitler was a Jew, so I don't know how that would work with England.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
you got to understand that. It's like even my uncle said that because he was in Germany at the time, they were bombing a certain part, and I think they blew up all of because Ford were making stuff at the moment. And apparently they found all this information that they basically apologized. Sorry, we just blew it up, but we'll rebuild new ones. So there was always this. You understand that there was a complex above it all, controlling it, and it wasn't really two sides. There never really is two sides. Wars are created to mirror our shadow at the end of the day. So I think, and I think they've been involved with extraterrestrial from way back. And if you read a lot of the old tech stuff. They were here before we were, and the whole reptilian thing everyone goes about, So I
mean, reptilians alone. The Palladians were up in Norway before we ever were. They were controlling they were helping those people build up there. I mean, it goes into Atlantis. It goes into everything else. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
Which I've had a couple different people on here who are experts in ancient civilizations, and I had actually an author on here who he believes he found where Atlantis was, where the main city of Atlantis was. And it's actually the main city is what now is a desert in Africa.
Okay, interesting. That would make sense. In some ways, because
it was the central core of it.
Right,
They may have had city states like an island that sunk, or other places they probably took over a lot of the world until they were defeated by the Greeks and the Egyptians. But it's interesting because they basically were the most advanced civilization of all time, and then they just disappeared because I think all the other civilizations were getting scared, and maybe there was some extraterrestrial influence there as well. Who knows? But
I think so, and I think it was another it was a shadow cycle that came back in. Because I think we've been doing this. Well, the Matrix explains it. It's like when he said, you're the 44th person to come and do this. And I think that's the whole model. And I think, obviously, because I think that's when women fell into that subdued of the male energy as well, because obviously they were high priests and priestesses. But I think there was four. I think it was the last one, wasn't it? The fourth Atlantis civilization where it collapsed. And they all went to Egypt. But again, in truth, when you talk to spirit, these are infant civilizations, Lemuria and Atlantis. They're like yesterday's. Some of the ones that we're talking millions and millions of years ago with even more advanced technology. Apparently, the portal systems that they use now, the government and all the rest of it, are the oldest tech on the planet, and it's dated back 3 or 4 million years. So it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
It's insane, and it's kind of sad because that means the extraterrestrials could help solve all the issues on this earth probably within a couple days, but yet they do nothing about it, and they just let their experiments suffer every day in financial woe and stress. And when they could solve so many issues, if they just gave us teleportation power, we could go to work in a second. We wouldn't have to drive cars anymore. We wouldn't.
Yeah.
It'd be none of that. It'd just be. Life would be easier. Life would be less stressful. Life would be better. But they don't. The extraterrestrials just either don't care or they just want to test us to see how far we make it before they have to help.
Yeah, and they're not allowed, as far as I know, they're not allowed to interfere because it's our free will. So if you get helped, we haven't learned, we haven't grown. So I think there's also that they can't intervolve too much. They can support. I know the last big thing they did, they cleaned up that big oil spill, that big BP oil spill. That was them. They cleaned it all up at the end of the day. So they do jump in at times and do things.
Oh, I mean, according to South Park, that was Cthulhu, but
South Park. I watched the one where the Queen was dead. Did you watch that one? That was hilarious.
Which one?
The South Park, when the Queen is dead after she passed, and then Harry and Meghan are doing their royal tour. I mean, that was hysterics.
Yeah,
we always watch that.
Yeah, when they touch on Canadian and British like culture on South Park, it's always freaking hilarious. I don't know why. It's just that American sense of humor about the rest of the world. But
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
On my other paranormal show, I make fun of our Canadian co-host all the time, and I'm like, "Why isn't your head split in half talking like this?" And she's just like, "Shut up, Jeremy."
Nice, good.
But it's so. You mentioned earlier shadow spirits. I got to ask, what do you think of the phenomenon of shadow people?
Shadow people, as in, what do you mean? In what sense? Like on Earth, would be physical or non-physical? I
mean, well, it's kind of hard to say because I mean they are on Earth. People see them in their homes from time to time. They've been seen in my home by a couple people when we first moved in. I mean, they're shadow people. They're just basically they look like people. They look like the shape of a human, but they're just full shadow. They're full shadow, and there's nothing there. I mean, they kind of, I don't know. I've heard multiple things. I've heard they're ultra-terrestrial. I've heard they're just spirits who have been stuck for a long time, and that's my theory. Kind of is that they're just spirits who have been stuck for a long time, and they learn to evolve their form to look like humans.
Yeah, well, the astral plane is you can manipulate, so you can step into someone's auric shell that's already there and take on their form. So there's a lot of manipulation again through imagination. So, yeah, as far as I know, look, there's a few channeled through. They call themselves the rainbow spirits. Now, when this is explained, and this was direct from a spirit in a channeling, basically, there's a lot of theory out there that we're all created at the same time. Now, apparently, this is not true. And also, consciousness is not perfect. People think that, this whole God program, everything's perfect, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the dysfunction on the planet is because they term themselves rainbow spirits because they are many different frequencies that have entwined and caused a lot of dysfunction. So they said if we weren't on the planet, you wouldn't have a lot of this polarity resonance that we've got going. So basically, when they were created, the creative forces were going through a lot of it's like a mother and father just arguing, right? It's a stress. Yeah. They were going through that at a time, and there was a lot of dysfunction. So they felt unloved, they felt abandoned, they felt this. So they've been wandering as spirits. And this was very interesting when I got this. I was blown away because it was just, and basically they've channeled through, and they're the ones that walk on the street with their heads down. They can't fit in. The people that join the circus, and they have a frequency around them. And what's happening is their souls, higher selves, have been trying to get them off the planet, but they keep creating karmic incidences with people. So magnetically, it's been causing a lot of problems. So they're actually starting to come through now because their higher selves are really trying to push them. So this is why a lot of authentic channelers are starting to bring through information and setting up sort of healing modalities like we're doing to sort of draw them in and awaken them to what is actually happening at the soul level. And trying to get them off the planet, and so a lot of beings shouldn't be here. So that energy magnetizes these shadows types people. Now we've all heard of the CIA MI6 using shadow beings to psychically attack. We know this in our community. It's second-rate news, but unfortunately, you've got a lot of interdimensional beings that can come through as well because the portals are constantly being opened, and you've got a lot of these. Sort of, as we say, deep state esoteric societies that open a lot of this stuff and bring them through. So there are beings that are sub-astral plane and going down into the lower dimensions. These are what we would call as shadow beings. Yeah, absolutely. But also a lot of them can be projections. So, and that's why.
Yeah.
So you never know. You never really know. The only way you're going to know is if it's through your own tuition, because your feelings will never lie to you. So it's that feeling. Now, people often talk about psychic protection. That whole thing needs to be debunked because it puts us in a polarized state again. It puts us in that fear we have to protect ourselves. What we need to do now, and this is from spirit, is that this planet is magnetic. So what you believe, you create. Okay? So if you have a pattern of abuse in you, you are going to manifest abuse in this life on some level, whether it's verbal, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic, whatever, because you have the magnet to draw it in. It's magnetic. You then have to resolve that in your soul body to release the magnet, and then you won't come. So if you change your vibration, this is what everyone talks about, vibration, and you get your cells, that misinformation moved, because you've got to create oscillation in the cell body, because most things are unilateral, which is why people stay stuck in their ways. So once that's swinging, then you can release the magnetic energy, you see, and then you don't start attracting those things, and then and then we become like we're untouchable in some ways, energetically, psychically. So really about working on ourselves now, changing that vibration. And it's like I say to people, when you fear, you've got panic, you've got stress coming up. That emotional energy is looking for your acknowledgement, and everything in existence wants to be acknowledged because it defines its state and it changes its frequency. So when you observe emotion in your imagination, you're feeling anxiety, right? So you close your eyes, you observe it in your imagination, you give it like an archetype, whatever, something to detach your conscious, your ego. And as soon as you break away, it allows divine current algorithm to move in, and it breaks that polarity. So the emotional energy starts to release itself. So a lot of these triggers that are happening at the moment, what people are seeing as well, is a reflection of what they're denying. So if the soul wishes to freak them out, it's going to create a lot of fear, but ultimately that fear is to release itself, because fear is exhausted. If you talk to the consciousness of fear, it wants off the planet. It's done. And spirit said, we don't have to suffer anymore. Yeah. Spirit, human beings are now going backwards because we're not listening. Like COVID was an awakening period to get people to go more into self-inquiry, look more at their lives and, work-life balance, and just start to break that mold that we have to strive and struggle and stress and kill ourselves. And we're plugged into this milestone expectation. And of course, that has a huge effect on people when they don't reach it, and also, the goals and stuff. They did a study on men that come out of corporate, and they're all getting pancreatic cancer because they didn't have that drive anymore, because they were emotionally inept. They couldn't deal with themselves emotionally because it was all about strive, stress, struggle. And so this is the pandemic on the planet. It's getting people to realize that which they are not. And that's the hardest thing. You're not what you believe you are. You're not what you project yourself to be. You're more. And you're not the conditioning, the programming. So it's a very interesting structure at the moment, how everything's unfolding.
It is. I mean, and you're 100% right. If people don't realize what's inside them and they don't learn to overcome their demons, for lack of a better word, then they're not gonna learn to control themselves. And it's funny though, when you talk about things coming through interdimensionally, that literally is the definition of ultra-terrestrial. And I've had lucid dreamers on this show. I've had astral projectionists on this show, and they talk about going to these other realms, and some of them are fearful realms where you're going to be scared of what lives there. You just get immediate feeling as soon as you cross over. And then there's also the more euphoric realms where you feel like you're home, you feel like you're happy, you feel the creatures are cute or nice, and they don't want to hurt you. I mean, it's the best of both. It's always a negative, always a positive. It's always yin and yang. It has to be. But it's interesting though, because I mean, I think ultra-terrestrial is not taking the fact that people say that Sasquatches or Bigfoots are ultra-terrestrial, which, I mean, I've heard plenty of stories about them in the UK as well. And all over the world, really. There's these creatures all over the world that can't be explained, and being ultra-terrestrial would explain these creatures to some degree, because that's how they can disappear and reappear at will.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it just amazes me, because, I mean, I, like most Americans, I think of England because I've never been. And I think of cities. I don't think of like woods and countryside as much, because we see movies where it's all London or it's
London
all
based.
city.
So,
I mean, But let me ask you this: since you are from the UK, where do you think that Fae or elementals play into all this?
I think, look back, the rebirth of spirituality happened here probably 100 years ago. So it was a rebirth, and I don't know what happened to England. It's all gone a bit sideways now, but, we were very much connected to the occult. We would talk to spirits. Everyone would go to a medium. You go for a tarot reading. That was the norm, right? So you understood that, and you understood that working with nature was the best way to keep everything in balance. So the nature spirits, which are your fairies, your gnomes, and all that, and I've seen pixies, I've seen gnomes, so they're real. Absolutely, I've seen them. And they are depicted as the artists write them, which is quite interesting as well. And this place, like especially Glastonbury, down the south west coast, there's a lot of everything. But London as well. I mean, the ley lines here are hugely powerful. This is why England was able to control 2/3 of the planet, in its cycle, not obviously now.
Yeah.
But because of you'd be able to conjure energy. Like all churches are built on ley lines. So when you go into the church, it takes your power away. And that's how they always stayed in power. But the energy, apparently the Syrians reversed it about 10 years ago. So every time you walk into the church now, they lose power because of the intention's been reversed. It was something to do with the energy around the altar. The ancient Egyptians used to get into this because they used to use granite and feldspar, which was granite and marble, and it was a conductor, and that's how they used to go in and out of dimensions. So you had one pyramid spinning this way, and you'd have an invisible going the other way, clockwise, and it would count this force. And of course, they would use minerals to open it. So it's the same sort of analogy, really. So it's I mean, you could talk for ages on this subject, but ultimately, the body's a portal. So when I do my workshop, I teach people to go into their pineal gland and open it up, and then you can go into the multiverse, because the body and there are many parts in the body where you can access things. Like the hypothalamus, which is hardly spoken about in healing, is actually the physical suitcase of the soul. So it's where all of denied repressed trauma is. So that's the physical aspect of the soul body, the hypothalamus. Who would have thought about that? And then you've got all of this. Everyone, for example, now is caught in their base chakra, because the base chakra is masculine. It's there to strive, struggle. It's a survival. So every time they create a crisis, like the fuel crisis, healing crisis, coronavirus, it's to bring you into that base chakra, keep you locked in there. So you're not going in, because if you're in survival mode, you're not thinking about evolving yourself. You're just thinking about staying healthy or putting food on the table and working. So it's a very interesting what's happening on the planet. And we have to go through this shadow energy now. It's going to get darker for another 2 years, at least 2 or 3 years. But that's going to allow the shadow to fully emerge itself. And then the light will start to resolve on the planet, because they've been very, very clear. Nothing's going to stop this now. The light will come back. The earth will shine again. Because it's about the earth's evolution, not even about human beings. This is where we get caught up as well. The planet's moving. We're guests on the planet. The planet's evolving. So if you want to evolve, you need to go with the planet. It's not the other way around. So again, it's about coming back into the structure. So we talk about the elements in the body. We get people breathing into the elements, and we start to work with them, and even the planetary alignment as well. So it's quite interesting to come back to the basics as well, but in a different way, not how it's sort of, even the astrology that we teach is more about getting in touch with the consciousness of the planet and working with it that way than having a reading per se. So it's bringing people back to their basics of, because it's all inherent in us. We're all tribal deep down. We've all had that tribal experience. And this is why, American Indians, Aboriginals, they're still the most powerful beings on the planet, because they know the truth and they stick with that.
The Native Americans are a great source of power, and I've had one or two on my show, and they're always a pleasure to talk to, because they are so knowledgeable about things that the white men have forgotten over the centuries. We just
forgotten, absolutely,
because we weren't focused on it. We were focused on building up the Industrial Revolution, building everything up, and making it more easier for us to live. When really, it was easier for us to live when we were just farming and trading with each other before money got invented. Even it was just easier to live then. I mean, it goes back to the ancient civilizations before they discovered money. Even it was just easier. Like I'll trade you a pig for some of your produce. Whatever.
Yeah, the barter system. Yeah, and they want to bring that back. They're doing it in South Africa now. They've set up. There's a few people doing it. They've set up a whole towns or little small cities, and they're using that system. They're trying to introduce it to see if it works. So I think there are people out there that are actually doing this now, but I don't know how it's going to fit into how it's all going to work out yet. because we're in a time where spirit are not unsure because consciousness is still defining itself on the planet. So it's going to be very interesting. I do know that we do need the system is going to. They're not going to allow the one banking system, which everyone's fearing. That's not going to happen. That's what they're really trying to push now. Centralize the one bank. That will not happen. Spirit will be very, very clear. So
why would they want to do that? Do you want to make it easier for these hackers to hack the one bank and then everybody's screwed? Which honestly,
it's about power control, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, if we're ever going to go back to a bartering system that we did millennia ago that worked, the sad thing is to go back to that. I feel like it would have to be a complete economic downfall on Earth, where the dollar, the euro, all the monetary values are made worthless. That's what would have to happen. I mean, hopefully it's not like a zombie apocalypse or something that has to happen for that to work. But I mean, the awakening is coming, and it's scary though that we're going to live through 2 to 3 more years of darkness before it actually starts to happen.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the fact that, like, some news stations have been reporting that that scientists say the Earth has stopped spinning, the Earth has stopped rotating?
Right, I haven't heard that. Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I've heard a few news stations say that scientists are starting to believe that the Earth has stopped rotating, and that's why our weather has been so unpredictable. That's why a lot of things have happened. The temperatures have been dropping around the world, record highs, record lows. I mean, just basically, the world isn't what we once knew. Like, scientists can't predict things anymore like they once could. It's bad for crops. It's bad for a lot of things, and I don't know. It seems like something big is coming, and it's not going to be good, but that we have to fight through it for a little while to get to the good side of it.
Yeah, I've been very clear. Like all my messages, I've actually got a channel message here. I could actually read it off if you want. It's on from the consciousness of lava from volcanic rock. It's very, very interesting. I read this to my group the other day. But the weather thing, this whole weather thing is actually the Earth's emotional body is changing and shifting. This is just another cycle. We always do that. Back in the Middle Ages, England was like Africa. It was like 40, 50 degrees. It was stinking hot. So now it's cold. So the weather's always changing. It's just that we're in that period of where it's been the same for hundreds of years. So there's no actual reports of it changing. And now we're in the midst of a dimensional shift. You know, the atom's shifting. So of course the weather's going to change. The vibration on the planet's changing. It's going to affect everything. All of these volcanic eruptions and tsunamis and floods and all the rest of it. That's the Earth's emotional body cleansing herself, clearing it. And don't forget, I've never explained this, but what people don't understand is if you die or get killed or whatever happens to you, that's been agreed on the soul level. Nothing can go against your will. And this is another thing. It's all about acceptance when things come instead of fighting it, because it's like when you lose your job and people get panic and stressed. The soul has created that. Soul has got you the sack or redundant because it wants you to go to this place, because that's where you need to be. That's the next part of your soul contract. You need to meet these people. You need to have that experience, that relationship. Otherwise, you're not learning and growing. So we get too stuck in staying in one place. And this is another thing that needs to be shaken up, which has been great because the internet now, and everyone's international now. Everyone's traveling. School kids are having a year off and they're going to do things that was never back in our day when we were kids, you know. So there is a shift now happening, which is good, but it's sort of married up. You know, this whole ADHD thing that they're going about with all these kids now. The kids do not fit into the draconian system on this planet anymore. It's too narrow-minded. It's too controlled. These kids that are coming on now, they're highly evolved beings, a lot of them. They can't come into this. It's like trying to stick a cat into a matchbox. You know, you can't fit. It's not going to work. You know, so it's like, you know, everything's been shaken up. But because we don't have the people in power that actually telling the truth at the moment, people are still freaking out and don't know what's going on. So again, misinformation is still in play. It's all about misinformation.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like every child nowadays has to have something wrong with them. It seems like they have to have ADD, ADHD. They have to be in the spectrum. Like every child is being put into boxes of what's wrong with them. Well, gee, maybe they're just being overwhelmed by everything going on in the world today, and they're not. I mean, my generation was literally the last generation that could handle what we were given as kids, because we didn't have the internet right away. We didn't know much about the world besides our small neighborhood until we got older. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs. We went outside the suburbs to the nearest city once in a while, but for shopping and whatnot. But I mean, most days we didn't leave our freaking house or our neighborhood. And if we went on our bikes throughout the neighborhood, that's about as far as we go. But we weren't seeing the world. I mean, I didn't know. I didn't even know. I grew up in New York. I didn't even know what New York City looked like until I was at least 6 or 7. So
there you go. Yeah,
it's not like I could turn on the internet. It's not like I can go online and look at Google Maps and be like, oh, here's a shot from a freaking satellite of what New York City looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the technology upgrades in this world have had benefits, but they've also had a lot of downside to them, and that's part of the issue. I mean, YouTube and computer games have ruined kids, as far as my opinion is.
Yeah,
we didn't have that, and we didn't learn things that we shouldn't learn yet because we didn't have access to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was all done in the library, wasn't it? You went to the library to get information.
I mean, you went to the library, or I mean, if you're lucky enough to be able to stay up late enough, you might catch some skinny max on at 3 a.m. on a staticky channel where you can't really see anything, but you still wanted to watch it because it was something you weren't supposed to see. But that's about as far as we went. Nowadays, that stuff advertises itself all over the internet, and you can't get away from it. You literally can't.
Yeah. Especially with the algorithms now, you put something in, and you get the advertising. It's like, and even Alexa and Siri pick up all your stuff. We found, like, we were talking about stuff in the house. You know, next day you're getting all the adverts for what you're talking about.
It's creepy. I mean, my wife will straight up say, like, okay, I just looked at something on Amazon. Get it now because they're low in stock, and if you don't get it now, they're going to advertise it on Facebook because I was looking at it, and then everybody else is going to buy it up. Like, that's literally the way the algorithm works nowadays. Is if you look at something, it's going to be advertised on Facebook for other people because they see someone looking at it, and they're like, oh, maybe these people who are similar to this person will be interested in it.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It's creepy beyond limits. And I've done whole episodes on other people's shows about like the impact of social media and the internet, and it's just horrible. But the one thing it did give us is it gave us a forum like podcast or like chat groups for people who are into the spiritual paranormal world to communicate and learn more and educate themselves from other people. Without having to go into the weird cults like the Aleister Crowley days and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I mean, but then again, Aleister Crowley was ahead of his time, but he was doing it in a very creepy way because he was just a creepy individual to begin with, and he just found power, and people like that shouldn't be given power to begin with.
No, not at all. Yes, the cult thing has been, you don't see it so much anymore, but you do, it does pipe its head up a few times here and there.
They still exist. I mean,
absolutely.
I've talked about them on my discussion podcast. We've done a few things about cults, and I mean, the FLDS is still very active out in Utah. So
which one's that? Sorry,
the Mormons, the
Mormons,
the hardcore Mormons, the fundamental Latter-day Saints.
Oh, yes.
The hardcore Mormons. I mean, they are still very active out there in the West, and I mean, I've heard stories from people I know who go on vacation to Utah, and like you pull on the side of the road to eat lunch or something, and the cop comes along. He's like, "What are you doing? You gonna be leaving soon?" And it's like, "Why? What's going on? You don't want me to see?"
Yeah,
and it's creepy.
Wow. Okay. We're thinking of going to Utah because we want to go to see all the rock formations and mountain ranges.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. One of my co-hosts from my other show lives in Utah, and it's not all like that. It's a lot of Utah.
No, it's just pockets. Yeah,
pockets of it. I mean, a lot of people are migrating to Utah from like California, especially during COVID, because they wanted to get out of the big cities. They wanted to go more to small towns because COVID changed a lot in America. It changed a lot because people were migrating out of the big cities because they didn't want to be around that many germs, and they wanted to move somewhere where you could be more isolated and not get sick constantly. Which, for someone who's had COVID 6-7 times now, probably, I stopped taking the test because I'm like, I have it again. Big deal. It's another thing. It's like I'm the flu when I was a kid at this point. Like it's
exactly. It's like tonsillitis every week. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was 800,000 people that moved out of London during COVID as well. It was quite interesting. So I think it's quite a worldwide, and I think people need to get out of the city as well because it affects your energy field. Like even just before COVID, I was thinking I don't feel quite comfortable here anymore. And then it was like, right, we've got to go. We're gone. In 2 months, we were out there, and it was feel better.
I mean, I have never lived in a big city because I never wanted to, because I always felt like big cities were too overwhelming to begin with that many people in a small area. Yeah. I mean, it's just I'd rather live in the suburbs or in a rural area where, yeah, I got neighbors, but guess what? I barely see them, and they live a good 100, 200 feet away at least, and they're not going to bother me.
That's good.
I don't want to live like this next to another house in the city, and you have to keep your blinds shut 24/7 because they can easily look out their window into yours. So
exactly. You can see each other's window. At least like when you're set up, you can agree to meet. It's like a like a formal thing, isn't it? You're not in each other's face every 5 minutes, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go talk to your neighbor, that's great. Go next door, walk down the street a little, and go up their driveway and talk to them. But I mean, absolutely. It's not like you constantly have to meet each other every day and deal with each other, because it creates a lot of the adverse relationships that
and small talk is too much sometimes. It's like
it really is. I mean, when I get home at the end of the day, I don't want to be like have somebody coming out being like, "Hey, how was work day?" Get the fuck away! I want to go to my house and see my kids and wife. That's what I want. That's what I want to do. I've been out of the house for 11 damn hours. I want to go in my house.
Exactly. Chill, man.
But I mean, because it's but I love it, because I mean, this world is awakening, and that's the message of it all. This world is awakening, and people like you are definitely assisting with that awakening in a great way, because everybody I had in the show is assisting with their awakening in some degree. Absolutely. Whether some more than others, but everybody's doing their part, and that's what matters, because we're going to need it in a few years. We're going to need everybody to be as awakened as they can be. And I mean, I've heard theories too that with COVID, that it took out people who were awakening, because that was the government's plan to take out those who are awakening, and that way they sent us back a few years.
Yeah. But always been population diminishing population. Sorry, it's been an agenda of the shadow for a long time, and a lot of people. So when they created COVID, they built it off of smallpox and tuberculosis, because most of our DNA has got an imprint of that. So again, it's all about receptor cells. So it was easy to pick up. So some people that are awakened that actually got COVID, it wasn't so much you caught the virus. It awakened the memory of having in another life, so you could actually let the imprint go. Because when it all came through, Spirit said, like, do on your Facebook group, start to remove the imprint. So we did a live channeling and healing to remove the frequency around the cell. It's quite interesting. That's part of the shadow work as well. But it was interesting to understand, because I even channeled COVID. I had a message, and it wasn't as horrible as they were saying. It said, I will not step into your consciousness unless your soul allows me to come in. And it was it's a very good way of actually taking that sort of hardline fear out of it, and understanding that what's really happening, and why this is happening. And it was almost like, because the light and the shadow came together, and it's the same energy. It's just different ends of the spectrum. And this duality, this primordial concept of duality doesn't exist. We're having a duality experience, but really, it's like we all shy away from a shadow. We don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have those thoughts, this and that. But ultimately, if you don't embrace that with love or acknowledgement, you're going to stay unilateral, and you're going to stay stuck, and you're never going to really get out of that cycle. And then what happens is the mind takes over the ego, and it's fickle in nature. That's why we're always all over the place. It's very hard to hold resonance. And even people working on themselves and clearing themselves, still it's very hard, because the energy on the planet at the moment is so polarized. So you can get swung left, right, and center. So it's really about staying grounded at the moment. And they said next year you have to be in nature as much as you can next year. You have to have bare feet on the ground, because the energy is going to shift, and the more you're holding on, because if you're barefoot, with the intention, the earth will siphon all of that energy out of your body and recycle it and use it for something positive. So it's like you say, when you're angry at someone, don't shoot it at them, shoot it into the earth, because the earth will recycle it. It's all about energy and consciousness. And that way you don't create a magnet.
It's exactly like my Reiki master always says. Like, she tells me all the time, like, go outside in nature and let the root from the earth attach to your feet and siphon the energy, and find the obsidian and the other two rocks I can remember that are deep below the earth, and connect to them. Like, I mean, I've been getting Reiki lessons now for a good 4 or 5 months, and
well done.
It's amazing. Like, I literally was crying the last one I had, because it unleashed so much darkness within me that I let go of, that it would just, because I mean, we're going through a tough time right now in every way, every aspect of life. But I mean, but it's the same thing you're saying. Like, I can have this great unleashing of all this energy, and then I go into the house and, the kids need this for next week at school. We don't have the money for that. Oh, great! Here comes that energy back again. Like, it's just, I need, like, I seriously just need to record the Reiki and just listen to it constantly to keep it working. But it's just,
it's hard to stay balanced. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But like I said, the more you work on yourself, you're not triggering, you're not creating, because karma, really, the whole concept that karma is wrong as well, because that creates primal. Again, that's duality, right? I did this, that's going to happen to me, blah blah blah. But really, if something bad's happening to you constantly, or you same thing, it's your soul trying to awaken you to something unresolved. It's going to create an experience for you to go, oh, hang on. So instead of going into blame or staying in the pain body, you've got to be inquisitive and say, well, so why is this happening? Because the inquisitive breaks that state, you see. And people aren't inquisitive. And this is the problem with the medical profession now. We're all running to the doctor just to get the medication, but not asking, why do I have it? Bruce Lipton debunked the whole epigenetics model, which was great. He was saying about, the brain of the cell is the membrane, not the nucleus. So the whole hereditary model has been debunked. So just because your mother got heart disease doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's about environment, belief systems, and what you feel. So if you change that in your life, you don't have to magnetize this whole model of I'm going to get that. That causes a lot of fear on people. A lot of my clients always come up that I'm really worried about getting cancer because my granddad had it, blah blah blah. So it's very interesting. It's just like, again, misinformation, right? So. Oh,
of course. Well, you're talking to someone who actually had a YouTube video taken down because we talked about COVID vaccines, and it got deemed as medical misinformation. So it's
tough on that. Yeah.
Oh, they are. Right? It got taken down. I appealed it, and they still were like, "Nope, you did this. We're taking it down for good." And I'm not even going to try to repost it because I don't want to lose my YouTube account completely.
Oh, you got to be careful. Yeah. You've got to talk around it. It's like just
Well,
people know they're not stupid.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's the government control is getting out of hand in a lot of things, and I just
it's crazy because the actual authenticity of the government was meant to be. We were meant to vote on everything, like all these policies, and there would have been there'll be a council of normal people that would have a council that would say, right, we voted on this. This is what we want to do. You're the governing body, so you make it law. You push it through. We tell you, but it's not. It's this dictatorship. We think we live in a democracy. No. We live in a dictatorship. We always have, and that's another thing. You can say with all this left ring, white ring, blah blah blah, but ultimately, we're under that control. And I think that's the thing that now human beings are waking up to, and that's great. Yep. They're saying, you know what I mean? This doesn't feel right. There's too much. You're saying this and then doing this, and it's like, but the whole reason we still listen to them when they go on their campaigns, and we still believe that they're going to deliver, is because of that brain programming around the reptilian stem of the brain. It's there to keep us believing in the lies. It's without us thinking for ourselves. It causes us to capitulate unconsciously, and this has been a huge part of the work that we're working with now, is getting the frequency around the brain changed so you can unleash that awakening, because it stops you from accessing stellar consciousness, your awareness of the non-physical as well. So very interesting.
The amount of times that people have told me in the last year that X-Files was right, there is a shadow council that controls everything in the country. I'm like, you're just realizing that now?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're telling me whatever they want to be called, Illuminati, NWO, like they exist. They definitely exist. And I mean, I think the Illuminati and the NWO are just covers for the actual issues going on. But but now they made CERN, and they're opening portals to things that shouldn't be opened, and who knows what's going to come through, because there are things that exist in this world that we don't want to know about, that we shouldn't know about.
No.
There's ancient things that have been on this earth since before humans were even thought of. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, Cthulhu is always my main example, because that is based on reality to some degree, I think, because I think there is ancient evils like that exist from different alien species, and they were here, and they were locked away on another plane, and that's where they need to stay. I mean, you don't open portals. That's just the worst thing you can ever do. Have you not seen enough movies? Yeah. I mean, shit. Everybody should see Poltergeist again, just to make sure they understand that you don't open portals. It's
like, don't touch the Ouija board.
don't even get me started on freaking Hasbro literally giving kids a toy to open portals. Like that's just
that's good. Yeah.
Not every kid's gonna do it on purpose, or not every kid's gonna do it at all. But still, the ones that do are bringing things into this world that don't need to be here.
Don't need to be here. Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Paul, why don't you tell the people where they can find you if they want to find out more about you, or where they can find the services you offer?
Yeah, so I work international, obviously, on over Skype and phone. So alignmentmodality.com. So all my stuff's on there, my socials at Universal Healing London is my Instagram, and I use Facebook as well. But if anyone wants to contact me via my website, it's a chat, it's a Wix platform, so there's interaction. And go from there, and I can put people on my group. I do live channelings and messages and meditations. So it's helpful if people want that information. My website's the best way. So alignmentmodality.com.
All right, and that of course will be in the description of this podcast as well, folks. So if you don't want to remember all that, you could just go click the link, of course, and it'll bring you right to Paul's information, and he could see if he can help you, because we all need help nowadays. Don't be afraid to ask for it. That's the number one message of this show: is never be afraid to ask for help with your spirit, because we all need it. This world is a dark and dangerous place nowadays, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves physically and metaphysically. That's Absolutely. The number one message I'd like to spread. And I want to thank Paul for coming on, because it's been a very entertaining show, and we got to talk about a lot of great things. I mean, literally, the hour flew by so fast. I was like, "Oh, damn!" But all my listeners and watchers, you know where you can find me. If you don't by now, shame. But listen to the outro if you need a reminder, or if you're new. If you're new, go back about 180 episodes and start from the beginning. Thank you. Other than that, you all can catch me. I believe I'll be back either on Wednesday or Thursday with another episode. And be sure to watch Global Strangers tonight if you are watching this today at some point. Other than that, like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, and go check out Paul's website. Other than that, have a good day, folks. Hope you enjoy your Sunday, and I will see you all soon.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers.
You can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant, or you can find me as Uncensored, Unapologetic, and Untamed UQ Podcast Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter and the Instagram as @JuggaloBastard, or should I say X now. And you can find me on TikTok as @JuggaloBastard Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube as Paranormal The New Normal. And you can also find me streaming on YouTube as Blind Knowledge Network, because all knowledge is blind until they admit Bigfoot exists.